Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's Keith Giffen Day, so we are taking a look at the second issue of the Dr. Fate miniseries from August 1987. Starting off with the cover, we've got a very kind of symmetrical composition, pretty classic composition with some striking visuals, some monster hands grabbing Dr. Fate's helmets with some monster mouths in the background, some very kind of weird, off-putting, very surreal kind of visuals, which is why we're taking a look at this miniseries. Obviously, we're looking at Keith Giffen material, but this is not written by him. So there's definitely a different vibe, I think, overall to the storyline. And it's kind of fun to see how Keith Giffen is interpreting that into like his artistic style. Usually there's always a lot of humor in something that's written by and drawn by Keith Giffen. And I definitely feel like here there's not a lot of humor necessarily in this book specifically. But there's something about it where I feel like he's pushing himself as far as the layouts and the storytelling and the graphic kind of boldness that's going on in this book. Also, I'll say that I feel like this is pre-Vertigo. Definitely has a lot of Vertigo vibes to this book, right? Probably what, had this been published a few years later, would have been under the Vertigo imprint. So there you go. Let's have a look inside, guys. Take a look at some awesome Keith Giffen artwork. We've got GM DeMatteis, or DeMatteis as the writer, tomato, you tell me how to pronounce it in the comments if you know. Keith Giffen is credited, as artist, probably penciler, as Dave Hunt is the inker. Augustin Mas, the letterer, and Anthony Tolan colorist. Colors are really good on this book. I talked about it last issue. We'll have more comments about it today, I'm sure. And just a nice kind of striking splash page to get us started with our main character, walking towards a castle tower. Really good work with the negative space here with the trees and the snow. I think that works really well. And again, there's just interesting use of graphics all throughout this book. Contrast, negative space that I'm going to point out because, as I said, I feel like, because someone else is writing this, it's almost kind of giving Keith Giffen an excuse to experiment and try different things. And with kind of the vibe of the story in the book, it kind of makes sense as well. It being kind of Vertigo-esque, surrealist kind of stomp. Still getting a little bit of the Alex Sinner stuff that I talked about, right? Slowly but surely as we move throughout the 80s and the early 90s, that influence on Keith Giffen will kind of pull back and go away. But the heavily shaded cheekbones is a very Alex Sinner kind of thing that I mentioned before, right? But then you get this character here who's, aesthetically literally not from the same kind of graphic language that he's using here. So it shifts, right? This feels almost more old school kind of 60s-ish kind of vibe, bit of almost Archie comics. And this close-up here, again, is kind of a mashup of, his Kirby influence and his Munoz, who is the artist on Alex Sinner. So you've got the Kirby close-up on the eyes, which is very typical of Kirby comics, and then the rendering of it and the shading of it is very much like Munoz. Frank Miller's another guy who's been kind of accused of copying Munoz's style, and I'm sure he saw it and incorporated some elements from it for sure, as far as the stark black and white art. That's just, we saw it last issue, but that any shot of a character's stomach turning into a mouth here, just interesting. And all throughout the book, he uses kind of power emanations and streams of energy all throughout in the design and the layering of the images, right? And it works really well. Like here, there's almost nothing on the page, right? There's just a lot of abstract shapes that kind of, create that foggy feeling that works really well and is very moody. This book he's really good at defining kind of weird, odd, kind of horror-tinged moods all the way throughout with his backgrounds and stuff. Like what exactly is going on here in the background? Not sure. Just a bunch of weird shapes and some hatching, but it really works and helps the mood of the book. There's another interesting sequence here, right? We saw last issue of the Joker. We've got Two-Face. I'm not quite sure who this is referring to specifically, or should I know? I thought that maybe this is like Killer Croc or something, at least some other Arkham inmate, right? I'm not quite sure who that's supposed to be. And then boom, we just get the Doctor from Arkham just doing some weird kind of satanic shit or mystical shit, just like last issue, using the candles here in the foreground and the fire popping up as a layering effect. Weird smoke or energy coming out of this victim's body here. The monsters are kind of fuming a bit. All of that creates all those different little bits of layering that give depth to the image. Again, Vertigo, so we got a crotch shot here, but not very distinct specifically what's going on there. I mean, this might be unfortunately kind of a weird choice because it's ambiguous, so it's like Obviously this is a man, right? So that would be a penis or something, or just a bit of it and it's covered up, or some kind of, to me, it looks almost more like a vagina, to be honest. So I'm not quite sure if he was censoring himself or if editors or whatever, what this comes down to, but kind of a poor choice because it doesn't really, just leads to more questions than answers as to what's going on here. This is a great sequence because it just shows how great Giffen is at creating kind of surrealist, weird, wonky, kind of horror-tinged sequences. I love the distorted faces all the way throughout, multiplying here, and always throwing in that little bit of something to create that layering within the image. The use of screen tone here is very cool to create kind of off-putting effect. And again, just the way the mood is set here is just genius and works really well. Love, again, this maybe another variation on the Kirby eye close-up where it's a bit framed out and tilted, but still from that kind of original Kirby inspiration. And then, you know, when Dr. Fate fully forms once again, it's almost like that girl on the first page or the second page that I pointed out. We revert back to something that's much more kind of vintage comic booky to a certain extent. Feels kind of like the 60s or something, you know, the cleaner line superhero and big bold colors. I'm sure it's a conscious choice, but, you know, then, you know, as soon as we turn the page here, the heavy shadows kind of fall back on Dr. Fate, and we're back in that kind of weird, mad world that we were in a couple of pages ago. I love the way he kind of uses the angles on the cape differently from panel to panel. That works really well. Just his depiction of these monsters in the back and the typography he's using for the ha ha ha, which I don't know if he's done Heckler yet. I think Heckler comes after this, so it almost like I could be wrong, but if Heckler chronologically is after this, it's almost like you get some of the ideas from this here, maybe, right? A little bit of a precursor to that. I'm pretty sure Heckler's after this. Just great compositions. Look at that, right? And I talked about kind of the parallel Dr. Fate, Doctor Strange. So, you know, we're having to create other worlds, other dimensions, and Giffen's just creating something, again, really kind of odd and weird and off-putting that I like. More screen tone here. So we're reintroduced to the character from last issue, the monster that he encountered, who's basically taken over this Arkham Doctor. And I love here how he's taken a chomp out of him, but everything seems to be kind of bleeding out of his mouth in kind of liquid form and back to Dr. Fate. Just a weird visual here, and almost like a Little Shop of Horrors vibe to this guy as well. And all throughout this miniseries, it's just every page has something visually interesting, something odd, something different that you really wouldn't see in another type of comic. Again, looking at these two pages here, the colors and the elements and the kind of weird stuff going on, it just, to me, you know, a few years later, this definitely would have been a Vertigo imprint book. And the creature has basically taken over Dr. Fate's accoutrements and helmet and cape and left him to die, I guess, right? And just another example how every page turn just offers up something weird and different and really fun and visually striking. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I love the subtle use of the color hold on this extra shape in the back here. Helps add depth and layering. This whole book is just visually quite a feast, and I'm really enjoying it. And trying to pick up as well some tricks that, you know, Keith Giffen is using here. I've talked about his composition skills before. You know, just, you know, every panel is like pitch perfect in as much as what it's depicting and what it's showing you, and how easily understood it is. Just perfect framing and stuff. And this panel here, just, you know, from a cartooning point of view, just perfect, right? Foreground element, figure off to the right, just not exactly in the middle. You know, everything's framed so that you see them. The coloring paler, the most contrast is in this section here. Just kind of a perfect storytelling panel right there. And he leaves us off with our character saying they think that I'm useless. They think they've beaten me, that without the helmet and amulet, I'm no threat to them. They are wrong. Wild Dog, don't know much about it. Never really got into it. Is this something worthwhile? Let me know. Seen these ads before, right? All right, guys. Well, I guess that is it for my review of Dr. Fate issue number 2. If you guys are out there and you are still watching and subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for the loyalty. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it really does help the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. If you're interested in checking out my comics, Big Baby and STARCRASHER, check out the links in the description below. Thanks again for watching, everybody out there, and have an awesome day.
Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.